Kam Raghavan, welcome. Please introduce yourself to the BIS Connect parents.
Hey Bindu, thank you for having me here this evening. Looking forward to hanging out with you for a few minutes and speaking to the wider BIS community as well. So I'm Cam. I have two kids, one of them who's in grade 4 at BIS, and second one, Arjun, who will actually start grade 1 in a few months' time in August.
Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Well, that was a long time ago, but I shall try. So yeah, I was born and brought up in Bangalore, a very typical South Indian family with deep-rooted South Indian values. But I had the I guess, good fortune of actually growing up in a community where we had some space, we had gardens to play in, we had a tennis court, we had a pool. I think in that way I was quite lucky. So my childhood, was a very simple one. I think if I were to reflect on some of the key things about it, I was a tomboy at heart, played a lot of sport, and my community only had boys apart from my sisters. So it was a lot of cricket, football, climbing trees, picking mangoes in the summers, a lot of accidents. I was pretty accident prone. But yeah, I loved my childhood. It was a far more simpler and happier life, I think, compared to the one we're exposed to these days.
Couldn't agree more. Having grown up in Bangalore myself, it literally took me back when you said, especially the mangoes bit. I think it was a rite of passage. I think pretty much in Bangalore if you grew up here.
Yeah.
Wonderful. What do you do professionally?
My summers,
Sorry, go
uh,
ahead.
sorry, just on the mango bit, my summers are incomplete without totapuri, mavinkai with chili and salt, and a squeeze of lemon.
There is
Um,
something so nostalgic, isn't it? I mean, just sitting, looking at them sitting outside your school. It
yeah.
just is what it is, right?
Yes, yes. I kind of come back to the point of some of those memories that you make as in your childhood kind of stay with you for the rest of your life, don't they? And you keep wanting to go back in time to recreate some of those moments. But so often, I think it's a flawed initiative because you never quite get the same feeling.
Never do.
But I'm grateful to have had those memories.
Yeah, they're wonderful. What do you do professionally? What inspired you to pursue your current profession?
Hmm. So I would probably say I'm a jack of all trades, because even though I qualified as a CPA in Australia, my current role is a much broader role. So I'm the country head for a company called Pentland Brands, which is a UK-based company. And in India, we have multiple operations. We have a supply chain function where we work with factories to manufacture clothing, sports goods, as well as footwear, which are mostly exported back to our customers across the globe. We also have commercial, so which is we sell some of our brands into the market, India market. And the third part of our functions is what we call as a global capability hub. So we have multiple functions operating out of India, supporting the global functions. So I happen to be lucky enough to be the leader for India. So I get to dabble in a lot of different things. It's not one particular thing that I work on. It gives me a lot of pleasure to nurture new young talent as well. So out of the 90 odd people we have, predominantly most of them in the 25 to 35 bracket. So it gives me a lot of pleasure kind of, giving them the encouragement, the support, and the inspiration, especially to the younger female staff in my team, to strive for more and, to be better every single day. So in terms of inspiration, I think, when I go back to when I started college, I didn't really have anyone kind of guiding me or counseling me on what it is that I should be ending up doing. And it was very simply the only kind of college seat I could get because I wasn't a great student. So my marks weren't that brilliant when I left 10th grade. So it was pretty much, I fell into accounting, but I had a great professor and I absolutely fell in love with accounting and finance. And I think that kind of paved my path and gave me some direction on what I wanted to do. So when I finished college in Bangalore, I left to go to Australia. So it was actually a couple of options. It was crossroads of a real proper kind because I was 20. I had the option. I'd applied to the Indian Air Force and was the first batch of short service commission for women. So I remember going through a number of tests, written, physical, psychological assessment, health assessment, and finally being given the letter that I was selected. At the same time, I was also applying to, go out to Australia because there was I guess an element of wanting to do something different with my life. I was in a college which was very traditional. A lot of the girls that I went to college with were, pretty much getting off, I'm saying offers, but it sounded like that, offers
Yeah,
of marriage,
married off.
um, you know, and that's the last thing that was on my mind. I want to kind of go out and see the world a bit and lead a different life to what seemed the norm. So I'd also applied to go to Australia, which was different to what most people do, which is go to the US. Australia was an easier choice because I had some family there, and it was an easier one for my family to kind of think, okay, maybe that's where she could go. And it happened at the same time, 1994. So I had the offer from the Air Force come through as well as my Australian visa, and I chose the latter purely because the Air Force one at the time was a short services commission role, which was 5 years long, and there was no visibility of what that would end up like after those 5 years. But no regrets. I think going to Australia really helped me grow as a person as well as from a professional perspective, giving me the focus that I needed. It was tough times, but we all persist, don't we, when we have adversity thrown at us. So long answer, but yeah, finance is my core kind of capability, which helps me in lots of different ways even today. And that was the reason I got into it.
Long but interesting answer. Continuing on in that same vein, what drives you through the tough times?
It's a very simple answer. So, I always revert back to my inspiration throughout life has been my grandmother and my mom, who went through a lot of tough times in their life. Mom and dad separated soon after they got married, and in those days, you can imagine it was probably unheard of. Um, but she didn't just go into a shell and blame the world for it. She took charge. She built a life for herself, and when we came along, so I have two other sisters as well, and I was the worst in terms of wanting to go to school. I would always cry. In fact, my older sister was 2 years older than me. Um, copped the brunt of it because the teachers got so tired of me screaming in nursery. They put me next to her, who was already in grade 1. So I ended up studying with her all through school, and she would invariably be the one doing my homeworks and, copying it from the teachers because they would find out that she'd actually done it for me. Um, but going back to your question, there was I think a moment there where my grandmother had a conversation with my mom to say, why are you even struggling to send her to school because she's so adamant of not going to school. And mom said, so her answer to that was that I want all my daughters to be able to look after themselves and stand on their own 2 feet and never rely on, a man to
Mm.
fend for themselves. Um, and the way she lived her life is an inspiration in itself. It's to never say um, no to kind of anything positive in your life. Always fight, always stand up for what's right. And that's kind of the principles or value systems that I live and breathe. I never take no for an answer. For me, if something is important, I'll fight for it. And yeah, so I mean, not saying that my life is perfect. There's always ups and downs as anyone else's. But I think the inspiration and the strength I saw while growing up has held me in good stead. So I just think that whatever is thrown at you, I think we need to be brave enough to face it and try and find a solution through it.
So basically, you come from a long tradition of fighters.
Yes, absolutely. And,
Good.
it would still be the case. Even if my grandma was here today, she would still be taking on people. But I'm that, I don't stand for injustice of any kind. I'm always getting into arguments with people when I see something wrong happening. But, that's me. And I won't be making any excuses or apologizing for that behavior.
Considering where we are at this particular time in our collective history, that's actually a complete asset to be having around at this point. Maybe, God willing, a couple of years down the line, maybe we won't need it as much as we need it at this point. But at this point, I think coming from a long tradition of fighters is a good one.
Ideally, I don't think any of us want to be fighting, especially
Agreed.
given it's a school.
Agreed.
But having said that, I think what we've seen is not really kind of behaviors that you would associate with the school.
Mm.
Like that saying, when things get tough, the tough get going. And I think a few of us are tough, and I think we're very clear that we need to clean up things at school and we need to throw the bad apples out and bring the school back to its former glory. So yeah, bring it on.
Moving into one of my favorite questions. If moods choose music, what moods drive your music choices?
It's an interesting one. But I would say I like music that's uplifting, that makes me feel good about myself and good about the world. So yeah, and also, because a lot of the music I like is connected to different moments in my life, different experiences in life. So I tend to have a very eclectic mix of music, going back to the Tamil music I grew up with in the 80s, to the 90s, which was more kind of probably, yeah, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, that kind of genre. And then, more recently, it's folks like Ed Sheeran, Sam Smith, Harry Styles. So yeah, literally, I think I have a really bizarre kind of mix of music. A lot of it's also driven by what our kids now listen to. So yeah, so there's no one particular kind of music. It's mostly uplifting, not a big heavy metal fan, more kind of country and soft music, I guess.
It's really odd. If you do this, I think now that I've done this couple of times, I think it'll be good to actually start predicting what music people will listen to. I just spoke to Faisal, and he shocked me by saying that he's into rock. And
Oh,
so it's very
I
odd.
didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's actually
Yeah.
been such a revelation that you would put a person in a particular bucket, and then they say something like, "I listen to classical jazz," and you're like, "Really?" It's interesting. It's just interesting. All right, what do you
Yeah.
think is unique about the cultural fabric of Bangalore?
Mm. I was born and brought up here, so I love Bangalore. I think it's such a unique city in terms of being always open and welcoming of people, irrespective of where you come from. You never feel like an outsider. And I haven't lived in too many other cities in India, but I've lived for a little while in Chennai and in Delhi and Gurgaon. And there's always an element of, when you talk to the locals that you're not from here, so you kind of get treated a little differently. Um, so I think Bangalore is not like that, and I think the real testament to the city is just today. If you look at the number of people from various parts of the country who call Bangalore home, I think that's a clear testament of what a wonderful city this is. So yeah, I mean it's multicultural. Food is great. The beer is great. I mean, in some cities you have to have a special license to go and get a get a beer. Um, I think it's such a unique city in so many ways, and the weather is, brilliant as well, isn't it? So yeah, I don't think I would want to live in any other city but this one. It's a unique and special place for sure.
I have to agree. You won't get, if you're saying something negative, you'll hear from me on this loudly, but completely agree with what you said. If you have to have a conversation, or if you could have a conversation with any historical figure, who would it be
Hmm.
and why?
I think it'll be, can I have a couple of choices?
Sure.
So I obviously have a lot of time for a lot of people in our history, not just Indian history, global history. But I also have this thing, I think you probably gleaned that from my conversation earlier about, fighting for the right things, sticking up to your values, your core principles on doing the right thing. And when I grew up, Mahatma Gandhi was a big inspiration for me, and I still remember the day when the movie Gandhi was released, and the entire school was shepherded into a theater to watch it. Um, and I was pretty young though. I can't even remember, maybe 8 or 9 then. But he is an absolute icon for me. Like, the I used to kind of read a lot of his literature. Not that as a grown up, obviously you go back and reflect, and maybe everything there wasn't on point, but just to kind of to take on the mighty British Empire and do it in the way he did to give us the independence, and to also kind of keep the ground level values that he had about keeping our country united, not taking sides from a religious perspective, his values on caring for animals, his values around leading a life that you can reflect on and be happy about. So there's lots of themes that kind of influence the way I thought. Early on. I think as I was starting to grow older, it was more the likes of the female leaders around the world, and I had the privilege of seeing people like Mrs. Gandhi, Margaret Thatcher. These are again amazing. Um, uh, female leaders that shaped my thinking on what is possible as a young girl growing up in India. Because, whether we like it or not, our traditional system and approach always puts the female child at the back of the line, right? And
Sure.
it's obviously changing, but you can go back to the 80s and it was a very different world then. So for me to look up to female global leaders who are absolutely kicking butt, I think that was very special.
Very good. Very nice choices. I agree. I completely agree, but I think it's not changing fast enough. Unfortunately, this business of being empowered in our country, I think I'm not even sure. Maybe I'm being pessimistic, but I'm not even sure if in the next 20 years we would all be empowered enough to say, my right to this, that, or the other, whatever it is. So I can understand what you're saying, right? That these
Yeah,
women in the
I
80s, especially.
yeah, I agree with you, Bindu. I think our society is not acting fast enough to provide the right opportunities and create that environment of empowering a woman. But having said that, I'm also a great believer that each of us have a role to play. As female leaders or female entrepreneurs or whatever the role we play, mothers who do this as a full-time thing, taking care of kids is not an easy job. We all have a role to play as well. Why should it be waiting for somebody else to create those opportunities or create those, uh, um, you know, situations where we feel empowered. I think, there's that saying, isn't there? Don't wait for somebody to give you a chair at the table. Just go and find yourself one. And I think that's what we need to imbibe in our young girls. Tell them that whatever they want to do, the world is their oyster. They shouldn't be limiting themselves. And I think we should also expect all our teaching community across all schools to also imbibe this and in every single girl child. It should never be should never be left to circumstances to give them those opportunities.
Agreed. Very, very important. Moving on to something else, what have you learned from success and what have you learned from failure?
Hmm. So it's a very interesting question. And for me, I actually learn a lot more when I fail at something than when I've done a brilliant job. Um, So I think failure teaches us a lot more. It keeps us grounded for a start, right? So you're not flying up and saying I'm brilliant.
Sure.
But more importantly, I think it helps us kind of reflect and observe and go back into something with renewed vigor, but also, a different outlook, different ways of looking at that problem. Obviously, I take pride in being a successful professional as well. I've come from pretty much very basic kind of education, like college, school, and stuff was very small setups in Bangalore. It wasn't, the places that you would go to get recognized. So I'm happy with the successes I've had in my career. But equally, I think you never get to a point where you stop learning. You always have to be open to new challenges, new ways of doing things, new skills that you can acquire. So you continue to grow.
Yes. Uh, they do teach. As unfortunately painful as they are, they're the ones that do all the teaching, the failures. What about BIS is inspirational to you?
So I've said this quite a few times, I think, as part of, the various conversations I've had as to why it is important for me that the school gets back to its former glory. And it's a very simple one. I remember we're an unconventional family, and we were very clear that we wanted Lara, our 10-year-old now, to go to a school where she would be completely accepted as just another child, and not be judged based on the kind of family setup she's coming from, or, made to feel different in a school setting. So I remember that interview we had right on, this is 4.5 years ago. And we just felt like we'd come home, it was such an open, um, honest culture, the way they spoke to us, the way they embraced us. And since then, all our experiences with the school has been so positive. There is not a single day when Lara gets up and says, you know what, I'm not going to school, I hate it, or whatever, right? And my interaction with the school was very limited. It was limited only to the PTMs that I would go in every, whenever that happens. I think there's 2 or 3 in a year, isn't there?
Hmm.
Um, and each of those times, the feeling of us being in the right place kept getting reinforced, because the teachers at BIS absolutely love what they do, and they love our children. Our kids are happy there, and I just hope and pray that we continue to be that school that creates these amazing opportunities for our kids, and creates that safety net that where they flourish. So this is what I love about the school, and I have friends who have kids in other schools, and I think this uniqueness of what BIS brings to all of us is something very, very special.
Yeah.
And I guess this is why we're fighting this long, hard fight.
Yeah, I agree. The comfort level for some reason is a through line that seems to go from grade 1 all the way to grade 12. And it's funny because the people who are talking about the same comfort level are themselves so diverse, but for whatever reason, this school seems to have a little bit of fairy dust, if I might call it, very philosophically, that there's something about it that keeps kids coming back and excited. And for me,
Yeah,
that's a big deal, right? You're not yanking your kid screaming and kicking every day to school, that they want to go to this place for whatever reasons. And that I think makes
exactly.
it very special. Moving to the
Yeah.
next one. What life changing event in the past has shaped you or your today?
I think, there's probably not one, to be honest. I
Mm.
think, there are things, I was giving an example when you spoke about, what's inspired me, right? And there's that one thing about growing up around women
Yes.
who did not wait for somebody else to come and tell them, you this is what you should be doing. They took charge, and just growing up with them defines you in so many ways, right? Gives you that clarity on that anything is possible.
Mm.
Um, Having said that, there's always different things that happen, throughout life, which defines who you are and defines your value systems and how you shape up. And it's probably not as simple as just choosing one thing,
Mm. Mm.
because if you think about the life choices you make, there are certain things that drive those life choices. I go back to the whole decision around whether I go to Australia or I go into the Air Force. Who knows? I could have been Akshata's
Buddy.
batchmate if I'd
Yes.
chosen the Air Force. Exactly. So similarly, if I hadn't gone to Australia, I probably wouldn't have studied there for as long as I did and met my partner there. So these life choices happen because of the decisions you make at a certain point in time. Similarly, we moved to England in the early 2000s, and the company I started working for them was transitioning the HQ to Switzerland, and I was lucky enough to move with them to Switzerland. So there are all these things that life kind of brings into your sphere, and you make those choices, which then drive how your life takes a turn. I don't know whether you've seen that movie. There's a movie that I quite often talk about called Sliding Doors, which is, I think it's a British movie with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Hmm.
And it talks about the two lives that can happen depending on whether you get on the train or you don't get on the train. So yeah, I think it's an interesting way to look at life, but I wouldn't say one thing defines what you end up with. I think life is always full of nice surprises and opportunities, and it's what we make of it. Even me coming back to India in 2008 was just wasn't supposed to happen. I came here with my current company for 6 months. It was supposed to be a secondment. I was going to set up the India operations and head back to my old role in London. And a variety of reasons later, I ended up staying, and I've been here for the last 15 years. And I can't think of a life any different to what I have now. So yeah, long answer again, Bindu. But
No,
it's not just one thing. There's a lot of different things at different points in time. And
feel
look, we
free.
are talking to each
Yeah.
other
Yes.
now because of what happened in February this year. So
True, true. Yeah, please feel free to, talk as much as you want. This is your interview, so please don't worry about it. That was a very interesting and thought-provoking answer, right? Something like Frost's "The way leading on to the way" and not coming back. Two roads diverge in the woods, depending on which one you take. I think that's what you've been saying. What if it was Air Force?
yeah,
What if it was Australia? What if it was continuing on in England? And each one is different, right? So that's actually very, very
yep,
interesting. Not an event, but many events. So interesting.
yes.
What is the one thing about you that most people don't know that you wish they did?
Oh, okay. That's an interesting question. I mean, Bindu, you know me, I think better than a few of the others in the BIS community. It's
Hmm.
probably not much,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be honest.
A few
Um,
hours at PWG.
um, yeah, I'm quite a private person as well, so and I don't really seek external validation, which is I'm not saying some people do, but it's not really my cup of tea. But if there's one thing that I'd like more people to know about, it's probably my work around animals, around dogs.
Yes.
I'm really passionate about animal welfare, and I'm also a honorary animal welfare officer with the Animal Welfare Board of India. What that actually means is I get an official card which I can use to gain credibility if I'm going to have a difficult conversation with somebody who has been engaging in animal cruelty, or if I have to go to the police station and request for the cops to step in
Super.
against somebody who's been engaging in animal cruelty. It always helps having that card. It's my passport to getting some
Hmm.
attention.
Very good. Yeah, that's while there's so much going for us and the country is going rah-rah and everybody's proud of it, but I feel there's such dark spots, hidden. And animal cruelty, I think, is one of those. And I'm so happy that so many people have taken it on seriously and now actually working on it. At least I know that in Bangalore, it's no longer popular to beat your dog to death. I mean, I'm being
Yeah,
very
yeah.
sarcastic here, but at one point it was perfectly okay, at some point.
Mm.
So it's important work, and these are those black spots or black areas that not much light has fallen onto, which is great to know there are people who are like seriously focusing on it.
Bangalore is one of the better places for it, you know. My heart breaks when I hear some of the stories that we get to hear
Mm,
from other parts of the country. So I think generally the city of Bangalore has been known as a place which is very kind and compassionate, not just towards our own, you know, pet dogs and cats, but also generally
mm,
around stray animals as
mm.
well. So we probably have the largest number of NGOs working in animal welfare in the city as well. So we're very, very lucky in that way. But I agree with you, and I think this goes back to the point that I was making earlier as well about how it is important for us as parents to really, and schools play a big role as well in creating a curriculum where kindness towards others, towards animals as well as other people, being compassionate, needs to be kind of cultivated right at the very beginning.
True.
If you know, and the kids who grow up being kind and compassionate towards animals will absolutely grow up to be decent human beings. And I
Mm.
think you will agree that that has to be our overarching objective. I mean, we don't want all our kids to be brilliant at academics and be rubbish at life, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think that's a very important element that should be part of our curriculum, you know.
I agree.
Um,
I
and
agree.
it's not focused enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Growing good people, I think growing academically sound people, like you said, is easy. Though it's not so
Mm.
easy, it's easy. But growing good people, on the other hand, I think that's a whole other, uh, you know, bucket of tricks. So yes,
Yeah.
animals, I think, play a huge role into that. So moving from animals into another sort of serious one.
Bindu, can I just hold you 1 second?
Sure.
I'm just getting a call from my shelter actually. So could you just give me like a second?
Not a
I'll
problem.
just call and see what's happening. Just
Not
give
a
me
problem.
1 second,
Not a
please.
problem. Is everything okay, Cam?
Yeah, sorry, I just had a couple of calls from the shelter. So I run an animal shelter, so just wanted to make sure everything was okay. Thank you. Sorry
Not a
for
not a
stopping
problem.
the call.
Not a problem. Strange that it came at the exact moment we were discussing about animals, compassion, kindness,
I know, exactly.
life.
Uh,
All
yeah,
right.
exactly.
Moving on to something equally serious. What are your
Mm,
thoughts on the concept of women seeking permission, whether in
mm.
personal or professional contexts? Please explain.
So this, again, the theme is very aligned with what we were discussing earlier, right? I don't think we should be seeking permission, you know.
Mm,
I think we should follow our heart, we should follow our instinct, our gut in doing what feels right for us, and seek forgiveness if need be.
mm.
But even that, I don't think is necessary. I think we all need to be brave enough to do what's right for us, you know. So I don't think we should be asking for permission. Why should we?
No, I don't think so. It's sad that
Yeah,
we live in a country where 50% of the population needs to be brave, you know, to
yeah,
follow their hearts, which is a sad commentary on all of us, I feel. But the good news is at least there's you and me sitting here and talking the way we are talking,
mm,
which means there's something changing at some point. My only beef with this whole thing is it's not changing fast enough. And we have generations that
mm,
are still being told what to wear, who to marry, where to go, what to do, what not to do,
mm.
when to do it, and why to do it. So, yes, it's sad, but there's good news.
Absolutely. Timmy agrees, by the way. Timmy's our rescue pug. He can't walk, but he has an amazing spirit.
Lovely.
Um, Bindu, I think, it's easy for me, isn't it? Like I can say that we need to just go ahead and be true to ourselves and do all those things. But, we live in a city which is, very open and probably very comfortable with the idea of women in leadership roles, women kind of setting up uh, shelters. I have a lot of friends who play a great role in looking after the stray animals in the city. Um, Similarly, I have friends, who are senior leaders in various businesses across the city as well and across the country. But we are a very small percentage of the overall female population in the country.
Yes.
And real change will only happen if we consistently keep pushing the agenda for equality in the way girl kids are treated, creating those opportunities for female entrepreneurs, female um, I guess, females who are getting into the workforce, and that doesn't happen overnight. There's several elements to it, and it kind of reminds me of my story around cricket. So, I spoke about my childhood, and I spoke about how I grew up with boys. So the options for games or sport was limited to cricket, football, and gilli danda. So I ended up playing cricket so much that I picked up the sport. It's a sport I absolutely love as we speak, and it's another 10 minutes, so I do hope I can finish this call and go and catch the finals. Um, but I ended up playing for the state from a very young age.
Ah,
I was I think I was 11 when I started playing sub juniors, and then very quickly graduated to juniors and the senior team as well. So I was the youngest in the senior team. Um, and I have a lot of fond memories of playing for the state, traveling in crowded trains, and staying in really unhygienic marriage halls because I mean, girls' sport, let alone girls' cricket, was kind of not a priority for anyone in those days.
correct.
Um, but what it taught me also, I think I missed this. Sport is again a great way for you to find that inner strength of resilience, of always fighting, of never giving anything up.
Sure.
Um, and it's been so satisfying for me to see that the opportunities that we didn't get, we had to pay for our own train tickets to travel and play these interstate games. If you look at what's happened with women's cricket in the last 3 years, it's phenomenal. They're
Correct.
getting the same wages as the men's team. There's the various T20 leagues around the world, which are giving these amazing opportunities for this woman to make a career in sport. And they're going to absolutely be kind of role models that so many girls will look up to and learn from and go for it. But it goes back to creating that ecosystem, where the girl child grows up not thinking of her gender being something that's going to not help her be successful in life. Gender should not be an issue, sh- you know, for any of us, but it should be, if anything, a positive kind of reinforcement that we need people of all genders to make a happy big world. Um, but I think men play a big role, don't they, in terms of making sure women come to the party. If you're seeing a female being talked down or not being treated the right way, call it out. It's all our responsibility. It's our collective responsibility to make sure that women get the place they deserve in our society. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm probably waffling on now, but I think, we shouldn't wait for permission, stuff that, let's go after what we want.
Agreed. That is just the way to do it. Is there a particular book or movie that has had a significant impact on your life?
I would probably say, I mean, in terms of You know, I love watching movies. I watch, all kinds of genres and constantly trying to find something that's going to blow my mind off.
Hmm.
Uh, but there's one movie that you know I do kind of go back to, not because of anything else, but it brings back a lot of nice memories about my dad and my mom, my sisters. There was this movie called Mauna Ragam, which is a Tamil movie, which released in the 80s, and we would all sit together in our living room and watch it. I think we'd watched it multiple times. And the reason I kind of still go back to it, I watch it even now, every now and then, is it just transports me back in time, to a very simple life, where everyone's just in the moment and enjoying that sense of belonging as a family unit. Um, yeah, love the soundtrack as well. So yeah, so not really an impact, but a feel good moment in my life, I would say, would be Mauna Raghu.
Yeah, memory jokers.
Mm.
Lots of them, right? They pull out these strange, heartwarming bits of life. Very, very
Yeah.
interesting. In most problematic situations, would you make your decisions and find solutions based on black, white, or gray areas?
Again, very interesting question. I'm a Libran, so as a natural tendency, I try to kind of evaluate both sides. It's a classic kind of good, bad, look at data, look at points of view, and come up with something that's going to be the least contentious.
Mhm.
Um, Having said that, I think I have grown. Um, Older and wiser over a period of time. And I also know that it's never as simple as, black or white. And
Mm.
I think we should all be open to looking at things differently, looking at something which may not be as obvious, and also be, little open to new ways of looking at old things and old issues, and yeah, embracing newer ways of looking at life as well.
Yeah. Sometimes peacemaking is far more important than standing your ground, right? So that little
Yeah,
bit of
yeah.
give sometimes is more important. Um, the next question I have to ask you is, have you done any voluntary work? We know you've done a lot. So I'll ask you the other half of it. What is your reason for volunteering, or what drove you to it?
Um, so I'll take you on a little bit of a journey, I think. Um, we're probably running out of time, but it's so the whole work that I do with animals just happened to me. I
Mm,
didn't go looking for it. We moved from Chennai to Bangalore. We moved into this apartment in this township, which was erstwhile HMT watch factory and
mm,
HMT tools. And what happened was, over a period of time, the factory wasn't doing well, and a lot of the people who lived here lost their jobs or were, made redundant and left their homes. But each of them had a dog, which they had kind of quasi adopted because they would feed the dog. But the reason they had these dogs was for security, because these are
mm,
all small independent houses. And we moved to Bangalore in 2012. I was just about to become a mother. Actually, I'd just given birth to Lara, and we were going for a walk down the road, and I saw this tiny little puppy, which was, making these crying noises, very malnourished, sick-looking pup, and it was sitting right next to what seemed to be the mother dog. And like this issue with stray dogs is such a big issue in our city, in our country, and we're almost oblivious to their existence.
mm.
And they just form part of our kind of environment, and nobody really notices them. And I was like that. So I was taking Lara for a walk in a pram, and I walked past this sick puppy, and maybe it was all of the maternal instinct, coursing through me at the time.
Sure.
I just felt like there was something wrong. So I kind of went back to have a look at the puppy and realized that the mother dog that the puppy was next to was actually dead.
Oh, shit.
Um, so without thinking twice, I mean, I'd never fostered a puppy before, and I just picked this puppy up and brought it home, and I figured out that there was some way I could, work out what to do. And I had a classic beginner's luck. We called this puppy Prince, and he found a home within 2 weeks. And I thought, wow, this is easy. I'm going to do more of this.
Famous last
But
words.
clearly, after 11 years of um, being engaged in animal welfare of all types and kinds, um, it's such an amazing journey for me because when I care deeply now for animals, and I think that reflects on who I am as a person as well. I'm
Mm,
kinder, I'm more compassionate. I don't seek cruel things or sad things, but I am just my eyes are always open for, I'm always looking at an animal that might be in distress that we could potentially help. Um, so we now have, starting from that one black tiny puppy we call Prince, we now have a feeding program where we feed around 400 plus dogs every single day.
wow.
We have a shelter which has around 42 dogs, mostly old dogs or dogs that can't survive
Mm,
out on the road, three-legged dogs, dogs that have been pet dogs who have been abandoned for whatever reason. Um, and more recently, a couple of years ago, I also, at the time with a friend, opened a veterinary clinic as well. The ethos was about providing high quality care for our community animals as well as rescued animals, because there was a real gap in that area. So every time I would rescue a dog, it would be such a challenge to find a vet who'd
mm,
be open to treating that dog because it's a stray dog, and they always kind of prioritize um, pet dogs or home dogs over these rescues, and I would end up paying an arm and a leg as well. So even though they were rescue dogs, I never felt that the vets we use would do anything to kind of subsidize the
mm.
expenses on
Unfortunately.
getting those animals treated. So yeah, for me, it's a way of life now. I kind of don't see that as something unique or special that we do. It just is something that defines who I am now. For me, that's a big part of what my life will be. I want to continue to work with animals. I want to continue to work on creating a structure or laws that will prevent animal cruelty, which will actually create a better system, so animals get cared for and respected the way they should. They can't speak for themselves. We are the more evolved race. We are the ones who can actually make a difference, and I think it's up to every one of us to do right by them.
That's
I don't know whether that answers your question, Bindu, but
brilliant.
yeah, it's
Brilliant answer.
it's
It's
just a way
so,
of life for me.
yeah, no, that's a brilliant answer and commendable work. I mean, fabulous work. I hope you guys, may your force, may your tribe increase as you guys go ahead with this one. Our last two questions, lighter ones. Are there any hobbies or interests that you're passionate about that you haven't spoken about already?
I love playing and watching sport.
Mm,
You know, it just is something that I've always kind of reverted back to.
mm,
It's what gives me happiness. Right now, even this morning, I was feeling pretty tired and a bit annoyed, and I just went out and had a hit with Lara, who's kind of taking on the mantle of being very good at many sports and not great at one,
mm,
like I was. So yeah, I think I play badminton, squash, tennis. So yeah, I love playing sport. I love traveling. Traveling is something I've always enjoyed. It creates opportunities for you to see new things, and globally, I think, there are so many amazing monuments and places and food to experience, wine to drink.
Mm.
So yeah, if I had if I have, whenever I get the opportunity, that's what I tend to want to do, which is travel. Yeah, sport and travel would be the two things.
Cool. And finally, what do you like to do for fun?
Um, I love hanging out with the dogs. I love sitting in front of the TV watching sport. Um, I really enjoy traveling, as I mentioned earlier. So those would be the things. I mean, it's great to hang out with the kids as well because they're growing up, and it's some of the things they say is like crazy.
Mm.
But it's fun watching them, grow into kind of a different version of themselves with each passing year.
Nice.
So yeah, very simple kind of desires and outlook on what makes me happy.
Nice. Finally, before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to say to the, larger parent body, and any last words that you have for them?
I think probably I'll keep it simple. I think my as I said earlier, my interaction with the school was limited to the PTMs, but I, for better or worse, was one of the first people on the scene when this whole thing started way back in February. And what I've seen over the last 3 months is probably um, not anything near what I expected to witness. It has challenged me in ways that has been shocking. One of the good things, by the way, Bindu, of being involved in this crisis is it's made me realize that what I do in my work life is actually very easy.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So, um, so I think as a parent community, it's very important that every parent takes ownership to bring about change, the right change, the
Mm.
positive change for the school. And I think the AGM gives them an opportunity to do that. So, let's all come and vote um, sensibly for the right candidates, to not be swayed by all the drama that surrounds the school or has surrounded the school in the last 3 months, of hearsay, of sensationalism, of dramatization, of things being put out there. We're all smart individuals and smart parents. Let's do the right thing, evaluate your candidates and choose wisely, because this is going to reflect what this school will become in the months and years to come. And we are actually playing with our kids' education and future as well. So we can't take this lightly. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Terrific. Cam, thank you so much for your time. All the very best. And I hope the election works out very well for you. And I hope you get on the board and really clean this up. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Bindu. Thank you for taking the time. It was some amazing questions there. Hopefully, it was as much fun for you as it has been for me as well.
It was. Thanks a ton. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Atan. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.